Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Stacy Rice, and I'd like to welcome everyone to our first ever We Wednesday virtual event. We Women Empowered is based in Gettysburg, Pennsylvania, and started as a way for women to support, honor, and connect and celebrate the rewards and challenges of professional women in our area. We're so excited that you could join us today. Before we get started, we do have a few housekeeping items. Jasmine did just mention that we'll keep everyone muted. I believe if you have a question, you can raise your hand at the bottom of the screen, and Laura will be watching out for that. If you are joining us for the post webinar Q&A and networking event, I will put a link in the chat at the end of this webinar, so everybody has access to that. It is also in the email that you should have received about today's event. Okay, now I will turn it over to Kylie Myers of Celebrate Gettysburg and a founding member of WE. Kylie.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us. As Stacy mentioned, I'm Kylie Myers with Celebrate Gettysburg Magazine. I would like to introduce today's moderators. WE founding member Patricia Green Rogers and WE co-founder Dr. Lori Hockley. Patricia, who runs her own public relations firm, believes strongly in connectivity locally and across the globe. Lori is an associate professor of management with Harrisburg Area Community College. She understands the need for enhanced networking and mentoring opportunities for all women. On behalf of WE Women Empowered, we would like to give a sincere thank you to Glenna and Yvonne for their time and their expertise today. Also, a reminder, as Stacy said, that if you are joining us for the post-webinar Q&A and networking, then you will need to use that designated link. So thank you all for joining us. We're looking forward to a great event today.
Thank you, Kylie. It is my pleasure to introduce our speaker, our first speaker, Dr. Glenna Crooks. Glenna Crooks, PhD, is one of the most sought after health policy advisors in both the public and private sectors for those who want wise, confidential counsel. Dr. Crook uses her vast experience, research, and original approaches, such as the centricity principle, to turn unsolvable problems into actionable solutions. Academically trained as a social scientist, Dr. Crooks has served as a public health advisor to 3 US presidents, officials of other nations, and global organizations. Her newest venture, the Cogent Sage Group, helps individuals, families, and businesses optimize human capital to help them achieve their goals. This is based on more than a decade of research, which is described in her book, The Network Sage, Realize Your Network Superpower. Please help me welcome Glenna Crooks, PhD. Thank you, Dr. Crooks, for joining us today.
Thank you very much, Lori. I'm really looking forward to this.
Today we have with us business owners, academics, students, stay-at-home moms, most of us embracing an entrepreneurial mindset and looking for ways to maintain and grow our professional and personal relationships, while many of the traditional face-to-face methods have been sidelined. As the network sage, what suggestions can you share for us to nurture our relationships?
Well, the first thing I'm going to suggest is that you hang in here through this entire webinar, because Dr. Yvonne Thompson, when she speaks, you will have a masterclass in how to connect globally. Now, my work and my remarks are going to focus a little bit more on staying closer to home, although the framework that I'm going to present will help anybody, whether they're working locally or whether they're working regionally, nationally, or globally as well. So the first thing you need to do is to know who you're connecting with. I know from my research that most of us don't, and that's a surprise to just about everybody who takes a look at the framework that my research developed. For the most part, the people in our lives are hiding in plain sight. And that was true even before COVID. It is more true now. So on behalf of helping everyone on the webinar to understand who they might be connected to, after this webinar, I'll be providing a workbook that you can send to everyone. What it will do is walk through the 8 networks that I've identified in my research. It will give some examples of the types of people who are in each one of those networks so that people can begin to look at their own networks themselves. Now, by the way, this is easy to do, and you can do it over the weekend if you happen to be multitasking and watching Netflix. It's just that simple. So once you've done that, then the next step is taking a look at who's important. Some people are going to be important because they support your personal life. Other people are going to be important because they support your business life. Once you have that list, then what you can do is recognize that we are all in extraordinary times. And whatever we feel, chances are those connections feel as well, and then start reaching out. Now, I'm of a generation that is still catching up on all of the various social media platforms that I think a lot of people attending the webinar today are much more familiar with than I am. So I'm not going to comment on how to use those. You understand that, you know the etiquette, you know how to support people that way. And I would encourage you to do that. For me, it almost rises to the level of a spiritual practice. I get up every morning and I look at social media and I look at who is posting something that I can react to in a positive way. Now, by positive, I mean one of two different things. When people ask for advice or information, if I can provide it, I do. Even if in cases people don't ask for advice or information, if they post something that I think deserves a thumbs up or a heart or a smiley face or some sort of positive reaction to encourage them, I do. I mean, sometimes that's something as simple as a mom posting a picture of a birthday cake that they made for their child to say, hey, you really rock this thing as a mom. You know, I'll be right over and save a piece for me, even though we both know that's not possible to do. And then also I encourage people to using that list of all of the folks in the networks that they've defined, then make one phone call every day. Even if you just leave a voicemail to those people to say, hey, you came across my mind. I was thinking about you today. Hope you're doing okay. Send one email to somebody on that list. And then to the degree that you can, don't minimize the impact of sending a handwritten note. Now, with regard to that, then I want to return to just something that we know about women when they are under stress. Yes, we've got a fight or a flight response, but we also have a tend and befriend response to stress. So this is a time to reach out to other people and tend and befriend. We survive in groups, after all. And I want to borrow a page from those people who talk about the value of gratitude. And just say from a personal experience, at one point I was at a very low point in my life. And what I did was use that opportunity to reach out and to say, you know, I was thinking about you, and I just want to say I'm so grateful that you are in my life and what you have contributed to me. Now, it was just a short note. I put it in the mail. I had no idea the response that I would get. The number of people who got back to me and said, you have no idea what this did. It arrived in my inbox at precisely the moment I was at an extremely low point in my life. And it really boosted me. I think now more than ever, we all need that.
Thank you, Dr. Crooks. Speaking of your inspiring book, The Network Sage, Realizing Your Network Superpower, you tell a simple story with quite a big impact. What is the blueberry connection, and what key lessons can we take away from it?
You know, I think that's a great segue question from what I just said, Lori. This happened in a train station in New York City. I had been there for the weekend to visit friends, and on a Sunday morning, I was headed home. A young woman with a 2-year-old child in a stroller came and sat next to me. The mom was feeding the little girl blueberries. She would put a blueberry in the little girl's hand, and then the girl would feed herself. Well, you know, blueberries and 2-year-old eye-hand coordination. One of those blueberries rolled off the little girl's hand and bounced on the floor a couple of feet away from us. Now, the mom at that point gasped as if she had done something wrong. She looked at me and she said, I'll get it. And I said, no, I'll get it. She said, no, I'll get it. Now, what I did at that moment was put on the best authoritative voice that I could muster, turned to her and said, look, you're the mom. For all you do, as far as I'm concerned, you are a rock star. The least I can do is pick up a blueberry. So I did. Now, as I turned to come back to my seat, I noticed her face. She was tearing up. She was going to cry. I thought to myself, oh my goodness, Glenna, you were trying to be helpful, and here you have now reduced a perfect stranger to tears. How are you going to take the edge off of this one? Well, when I sat back down, I said, I travel a lot, and I see women struggling with children as they travel. And I remember a speech that Judy Woodruff gave to the American Academy of Pediatrics annual meeting. In those remarks, she noted that when her husband traveled alone with their baby, lots of people, mostly women, reached out to help him. When she traveled alone, no one reached out to help her. I'm on a mission to change that. I notice moms and kids. I hold doors open. I let them go in front of me in line. I know a bit about what their lives might be. Now, it was time for her train, so she left. As she did, she handed me her business card. That's when I learned that she had a PhD. She was the executive director of a very important organization in Washington, D.C. that helps kids who are first-generation college students really make it through the whole college experience. Now, I thought a little bit about the difference between her life and mine just that morning. I stayed in a hotel, room service brought me coffee, my friend brought me breakfast, the doorman put my luggage in the trunk of the taxi. Now, she was staying with friends, I learned, and I have no idea if they fixed her breakfast, but I do know that she had herself and that little girl to get ready, clothes for two of them to pack, the stroller in the taxi, and maybe had no help getting the stroller and the luggage and the little girl out of the taxi when she arrived at the train station. In addition to that, she had a 3-hour train ride home to Washington. I only had an hour trip back to Philadelphia. I could have napped if I needed to, but I'm not sure she could, especially if her own little girl didn't. So you put all those things together, and I think that more than any single experience I've had, it's taught me about the challenges that working moms face, and therefore my own interest. I'd like to create a Blueberry Day, just so that we highlight how all of us can reach out and help a working mom now. And by the way, we're not going to help them at a train station, chances are, but knowing that they are at home, that they may be supervising their children's learning at home. I know that everybody on this call is creative enough to either suggest ways that people could help them, or to know ways they could reach out and help others.
What a wonderful story. Thank you for sharing that with us, Dr. Crooks. I'm wondering, can changing how we view our networks really change our lives? And if so, how?
Sure. Well, let me tell you the story about how this came to be. In 2005, a number of my clients, people who were senior executives in corporations, people who were senior appointees in governments, were telling me that life was just too complicated and they couldn't do it anymore. Now, I went looking for a solution. I organized chaos. I solved complicated problems. That's my job. I found an answer in an unlikely place from an unlikely person. The person was Robert Downey Jr. Now, by now it was 2007, and the trailer for the first Iron Man had been released. I like action flicks and superheroes, so I noticed. And I think because of that, noticed an interview that he did with a fashion magazine. In it, he said he had a pit crew of people helping him out, a yoga teacher, a sensei, a psychiatrist. He said, I need a pit crew because after all, I'm not a Model T, I'm a Ferrari. I must have been in a snarky mood that day because I thought to myself, Buster, if you're a Ferrari, I'm at least a Maserati. And you know what? You're right. It takes a pit crew. Who's mine? And how are they doing? And then later I realized, uh-oh, I'm on other people's pit crews. How am I doing? Now, that's what led to my own investigation of my own life and the people in it. Now, I hadn't yet organized into all of the networks that I describe and that you'll see in the workbook. But even understanding that list of people at the time, just for my personal life, not for my business, because I'd already done something like this for my business, but I'd never for my personal life. Just in my personal life, there were 139 people in it. My first thought was, am I high maintenance or what? And then I realized I have a simple life compared to most people I know because I'm not married. So I don't have a spouse and in-laws on that list. I don't have children. So there's no teachers and coaches and orthodontists and other soccer moms. My elderly mom was healthy. She didn't need me for anything but fun and love. I didn't have a dog and I didn't even have a cat. But what I did simply was to take a list of all of those people and divide it into two. One were things that I have to do. If I'm going to have my clothes tailored, I have to show up. But I don't have to take clothes to the dry cleaners or pick them up. I don't have to grocery shop or stand in lines or the post office. I could hire someone to do that for me. And even just a couple of hours a week of somebody working part-time doing those errands, it was a college student, freed me up to do other things. My income started to double year on year. Not always because I was working more, but because I had free time to spend in my garden, which is where I do some of my best thinking. So that made me much more productive. When you start looking at your networks, you will find ways to make your life easy. I can prove it. It's happened with every single one of the hundreds of people who, by the way, have ranged in age from 7 to 87 that have been included in my research. Once they see the data about who is in their networks, what they realize is the assets that they have, who is really helping them, who might be draining them, and who they might want to replace. They say it's a big reveal and that it's liberating and it gives them more power in terms of the connections that they have with others than to see where changes should be made and how to make those.
That's fascinating, Dr. Crooks. Thank you for sharing that with us.
Can I add one more thing though to that?
Please do.
One of the things that has been very apparent in the couple of years since I wrote the book is that when it comes to your career, the strengths and the weaknesses of every other one of those 7 networks will show up in force. So in my 8 network architecture, your career network is one of those. But to the degree that your other networks are solid and supportive of you, you're going to have an easier and better time in growing your career. How about some examples? So if you are a mom with kids and you're who are still living with you and you are responsible for their health, of course, if you have a pediatrician that always keeps you waiting, that's going to have an impact on your career. If you have a home and you don't have a good plumber, then if you find a leak under the kitchen sink tomorrow morning, you're not going to be able to settle down and work with a clear head. You're not going to also be able to supervise your kids. If you have an older relative, a parent or an in-law that you might be responsible for or care for or be concerned about in some way, if that person doesn't have a good set of networks, it's going to make it harder for you as a senior caregiver and therefore harder for you as a businesswoman trying to advance your career interest. So that's why some of the time, and I would say pretty much all of the cases of the women that I have worked with, it's really important that they not only focus on the network that is their career, but they make sure that those other 7 networks are robust and supportive and are not draining them of time and energy and money, that they could better focus on their career life.
And those are connections we can be working on now, even though we can't physically be with those connections.
In fact, now you might need to bolster them all the more. So as for example, let's even talk about the practical matters of the people who might come to your house should you have a need, like a plumber or an electrician, or a roofer should you find a leak in the roof. A little bit of outreach now, if you don't already have someone, to find out from your friends and networking with other homeowners who's somebody good you can put on your list would be a good thing to do now. If you already have someone, just a kind phone call to say, you know, you've been great for me as a plumber. I just want you to know if you're concerned about whether we'll ever be calling on you in the future, including during this COVID era, I just want you to know that we would trust you to come to our house and fix a leak if we found one. That would be reassuring and would help strengthen the connection that you would have with them. And if they are busy, it might get you bumped up higher on their priority list.
Great, thank you. Dr. Crooks, as a sought after expert in health policy, tell us about some of those connections you've written between health and prosperity. And why does this matter now more than ever before?
You know, I think there's nothing like this COVID era to tell us why our own health is important. And from a public health perspective, why it's important that we protect other people as much as ourselves. Let me tell you about how I came onto this, though. I had read a study by a demographer at UNC, the University of North Carolina, named Volpel. He had gone back and taken a look at what happens when you hit that wall and your health declines to the point where you die as we age, okay? He looked at a number of countries, and what he saw is that over the course of the last 150 years, that trajectory is not changed. That what has changed is the age at which we hit that wall. And over the last 150 years, that age at which we hit that wall and decline towards death has been extended out on average by 6 hours per day. Just think about that. If somebody walked up to me and said, I can give you 6 more hours a day, I would say, how and how much? Well, in reality, good public health, good nutrition, better housing, and then healthcare has given us that extended lifetime and lifespan. So when I looked at that, I realized that it was not a sprint to the finish line. It was a marathon. And that it was highly likely, and we're seeing this today, that people are going to live another 3 or 4 decades of healthy lifespan, which means to me that I could get out of the office and go to the gym and work out for an hour, that I could take some time to meditate in the morning, that I could stretch out my work and weave in social connections that are so important to avoiding loneliness. Because I wasn't going to retire at 65. I passed that a while ago. It's highly likely that I'm going to live another 25 years, and I intend to be engaged throughout that time frame. Now, you need to juxtapose that against other data, because as it turns out, it's your health that is a bigger determiner of your wealth than your education. And in fact, the labor economists, I'm told, are walking around with their heads down saying, how do we possibly miss this? Because the data are better as well. So for reasons in part that I've just described, you're going to live longer, you've got more of an opportunity to make money. If you're healthy, you can work more hours a day. If your children are healthy, you don't have to take off work to take care of them. You don't have to spend money on healthcare. So all of those things start to add up. And by the way, this is very, very important. While this is true of everyone at every socioeconomic level, the people who are at the lowest economic levels benefit the most. So working to improve the health of those people who are poor, who are marginalized, who are otherwise vulnerable for other reasons is a very good thing for our entire society to do. What is also true is when a country or the region of a country is healthy, it attracts more investment, including from overseas. Investors want to be investing in or a safe region of the country, one that is free from some of the diseases we're now seeing entering our own country in the US from climate change, for example, with some of the more tropical diseases now moving north into our southern states. So, you know, those are all ways in which we benefit. Now, if people are interested, and particularly if they are working in a field where this might matter, I will be sending you a white paper on that, which includes all of these citations, and perhaps it'll be useful for them in their work.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Dr. Crooks, one last question for you. You've been named a disruptive woman to watch. What is the value of disruption, and how can women entrepreneurs really lean into it?
There are two kinds of disruption, and I've been involved in both. So one kind that I experienced was somebody attempting to disrupt a system that I was in came from my years in government. You know, one of the things about any governing group or body is that we alternate times of consensus and conflict. And that dance is a good one. It could be a positive one. If all we did was sit around and agree with one another, we wouldn't get very far. On the other, so we need somebody to poke us from time to time and say we can do better. And that was the case on so many of the issues that I dealt with when I was a presidential appointee. Now, on the other hand, if all we did was disagree with one another, we wouldn't get very far either. So therein lies, I think, the second type of disruption, and the one where I like to play. I don't like to be the one that just causes trouble. I like to be the one who comes to the table with solutions. And if you're going to disrupt a system, in my opinion, you need to understand what it is first. And I also believe it's important that you have a certain respect for what that system, whether it's an educational one or healthcare or some other entrepreneurial vertical, to have a respect for what its intention is. What is the goal? Because if you understand that and you have a good heartfelt sense for it, then the solutions that you bring to the table, though they may be disruptive just a bit, will advance what the intention is intended to be to help other people. I have a very strong sense about that. I really believe that the prime directive for all of us as human beings is to create more and better life. So how we do that may cause a disruption for a time. And if it creates more life, then that's the direction that we should be leading.
Thank you so much, Dr. Crooks. We look forward to hearing more from you at the post-webinar Q&A, when our attendees will have a chance to ask you questions directly about your expertise and some of the information you share here today. We thank you.
Looking forward to it.
It's my pleasure to turn the floor over to my colleague, founding member and president of the Patricia Green Group, Patricia Green, who will introduce you to our next featured panelist.
Thank you so much, Lori. And again, thanks to all of you who are joining us this afternoon. Well, it is my distinct pleasure to introduce Dr. Yvonne Thompson. Dr. Thompson and I met in 2006, and we actually met through technology. I was planning trade missions to the UK for women in business, and Dr. Thompson's name kept popping up in my internet searches. And so I had to find her. I had to tell her what I wanted to do and hopefully get her to partner with me on this initiative. And she did. And I was so excited. I had actually attended an event in the Washington, D.C. area where I was living at the time. And these women who were from London, I asked, do you know Dr. Yvonne Thompson? And they all knew her and they said she was amazing. So we did about 3 to 4 trade missions together. Basically, I recruited the people and she made her commitment to the businesswomen a primary goal of hers. And they are still talking about how many great connections they met. We were on the heels of the London Olympics. And so with that in mind, there were plenty of contact to contract opportunities. Dr. Thompson's organization that she was engaged in when I met her, the European Federation of Business Owners, had affiliate members in not just the UK, but in Germany, in Holland, in France, and she also had connections here. So she was just a whiz at the power of connectivity. There are so many things I could say about her, but I just want to add that her original women's organization just morphed into WinTrade, and I know she's going to tell you a lot about WinTrade today. She's known as the first Black female millionaire. in the UK. She also founded the first Black female PR firm. I could go on, but let's welcome Dr. Yvonne Thompson.
Thank you so much, Patricia. Thank you very much. And thank you to the organizers and Dr. Crooks for, allowing me to participate. I feel quite honored being on the other side of the pond, as you call it, Patricia. Every time we talk about the UK, Patricia says the other side of the pond. So it's a great pleasure to be here and to participate. And I really hope that, all the participants today are getting so much out of this. I mean, just listening to Dr. Crooks, there's already so much information that I've garnered and that I will be using. And I would love a copy of your white paper when you send it, around. You and I both pretty much on the other side of 65. So it's great that we're still active, we're still disrupting. And I think that's a really important factor in keeping busy. And for me, it's all about being passionate. It's been passionate about what you do. It's been passionate about working with women, celebrating, supporting women, which I've now been doing for, my network's been running for 23 years. But I've been working for myself for nearly 40 years. And I love what I do in communications. And I think that's one of the things that kept us locked in, because we're both in PR marketing. And for me, my story is that I worked originally from South America. My parents came to the UK when it was fashionable to be invited by Queen Elizabeth to come and repair or contribute to the rebuilding of the motherland. So my parents upped their 6 children from South America, landed in the UK. And for most of us, we'd never seen snow before. We'd never been cold before. We arrived in the summer clothes that we left we left Guyana in. And my parents, I think, expected to be welcomed with open arms. And of course, when we arrived in the UK, it was totally opposite to everything that they were anticipating. And for me, my most precious gift from my parents is that they arrived with what I call a backpack of dreams for each of their children. They wanted us to be better, do better, live better, or they thought live better than they did in Guyana. But of course, when we arrived, it was the 60s and it was still fashionable for landlords to have on their doors the famous signs in the UK that said, no dogs, no, let's get it the right order, no Irish, no dogs, no blacks. So it was really difficult for us to find somewhere to live, but they did. They found 2 rooms in probably the worst street in the worst part of London at that time, because it was under the Battersea power station that gave power to the whole of London. And at that time, they were still using coal to fire up and get the electricity and gas. So we were right under the power station. And, we lived a long time in that way. But my parents worked the usual immigrant story, 3 jobs, 3 jobs each, 6 kids, and they saved enough to move on. But I always say, I give a lot of talks now, and I always say, if only I knew then about property prices, what I know now. Battersea is one of the most expensive areas in London now. And the street that I lived in is now a gated community. I could never afford it now. Well, I could, but I wouldn't. But I think ours is a typical story of immigrants, because we strive harder, we work harder, but we work smarter as well. So my story is arriving with 1 suitcase in London, in the UK, and now being a commander of the British Empire. So that journey is, quite a trajectory. And as you say, I had many firsts throughout my time. I worked at, my very first job was at CBS Records, where we worked with artists that you might still remember, Michael Jackson, from Michael Jackson to George Michael, right through the range of popular artists. But I was there for 7.5 years. And at that point, not only was it difficult for women, but it was even more difficult for women of color. And I always say I had a triple whammy, because at that time, I was also a single mother. So I just didn't feel, after 7.5 years, I just didn't feel I was getting anywhere. And I felt the only way for me to move up was to move out. So that's what I did, and started my own business. And of course, it was frightening. It was, it was terrifying, really, because, I was in PR. At that time, a lot of people didn't know what PR was. I was a woman of color. I had a daughter. Now, who was going to give me a job? But I had so much faith in myself. And I think for entrepreneurs, it's about being so focused and so passionate and so determined that nothing will stop you. And that's what I did. I mean, to the point where, my parents were saying, are you doing the right thing? You've got a daughter, how are you going to live? What about her education? But something inside of me told me that I was going to make it. And as I say, I focused on my focus. My focus was making my business work, and that's what I focused on. So it's not been an easy journey, but I loved every minute of it. I've loved the ups and I've loved the downs. And I've managed to, as you said earlier on, managed to become involved with several firsts in the UK, including being part of a group that started the first Black-owned radio station, which after 15 years, we sold for quite a lot of money to one of the mainstream radio groups, and it's still going now under a different name. And there's been, my journey has been, for me, it has been part of my superpower. We talked about superpowers earlier, but my superpower is about being passionate about helping other women, mentoring other women, small business. My passion keeps me up late at night, and my passion gets me out of bed early in the morning. So I am up until very late, and I'm up again very early in the morning. I could go on forever, so I'll stop there. I'm sure you've got other questions that you want to ask me.
That's the one I met and love. So let's talk about WinTrade for a minute. Have you been doing it for 3 years? Is it?
Yeah, we're now in the 4th year. So again, throughout my career, my whole thing has been about equality and diversity. So my first Women in Business network was very much focused on helping Black women in business. It was the first Black women in business network in the UK. As a woman in business, I was always being invited to lots of networking and lots of support, but I turn up and I tend to be the only person of color there. And I'm thinking to myself, there's got to be, there must be other women of color. I just haven't met them. So I started my network, and with the help of the radio station, we were able to publicize it, and it grew and it grew and it grew. Not only did it grow in the UK, but we suddenly started getting connections, as you said, from France, from Italy, from Germany, from Spain, from Holland. And we even got connections from the Caribbean and, of course, Africa and America. But for me, times have moved on, and equality and diversity for me works both ways. And I always say, for women of all colors, of all creed, of all backgrounds, religions, to work together, the only way for us to empathize and realize that we're all in the same fight and the same boat together is for us to be in the same room, at the same table, at the same time, learning from each other. So I decided 4 years ago, maybe 5 years ago now, to open up my Black women in business. It's not that I closed the doors to, you know, women, white women, but we didn't proactively. If they, you know, if we were joined by white women, yeah, fantastic. But they were the brave and the few. But now we proactively work with, and to the point where we've got women from all over Europe, from Kazakhstan, from Russia, from Belgium, from Poland, from, you know, most of the European countries, we've got members. And then, of course, we still have our Caribbean and a lot of African connections. And of course, through your help and your network, we have a lot of American women as well. In fact, I know one of our, I think it was our second, or was it the third Win Trade, you sent a delegation over, but you didn't come with them.
And I think she's on because she's one of our in-kind sponsors, Alexia.
Fantastic, fantastic.
Yeah, so on the subject of Win Trade, you were running these fantastic conferences, and now we're in a pandemic. So what tactics are you using currently to keep women engaged?
So as you said, we were running a week-long summit. So just to give you a little bit of idea about the summit, we'd literally a week, we would start out by having discussions about womenomics in the House of Commons in the morning on the Monday. In the afternoon, we went to the House of Lords. We were hosted by a couple of the baronesses, and we'd have tea, high tea on the terraces on the Thames. And if it was a good day, we all be out there having a wonderful tea party. And then on the Monday, on the Tuesday, that was the Monday, started the launch. Tuesday, we'd be, well, I'll give you an example of last year. So Monday, Houses of Parliament. Tuesday, we were at MasterCard. Wednesday, we were at, oh, thank you. Someone's put up the link. That's wonderful. Wednesday, we were at NatWest, one of the big banks. Thursday, we were with Deloitte, the accounting consultancy. We were also with Microsoft on Thursday. And then Friday morning, we had the greatest pleasure of opening the London Stock Exchange. That was wonderful. And after that, we were hosted by one of the large solicitors firms in the morning. Before the evening, we had our awards dinner for this year, or last year, it was about 450 people. But I think, you know, Patricia, in the old days, I think the largest one we had for our 10th anniversary was about 1,200, which was amazing. It was an amazing sight. So the thing is, it was so funny that we'd already launched the nominations for this year's awards. And then COVID hit, everything, lockdown, everybody was such in total confusion. And, you know, we had to think quickly about what it is we're going to do, how we're going to do it. And, you know, suddenly the internet became the internet of everything and everyone. And we had to find a way of making sure we kept our audience, our network, our friends, our family engaged. So we did go online. And it was a bit of a scary thing to do because there were obviously people out there who were experts at holding webinars and doing a lot of things online. But we took the plunge, we jumped in, and we've not stopped. We hold a webinar every week on a Thursday. And we kicked off with the Minister for Business from the UK, who came and told all the small businesses about, you know, what was available, what support was available, what the government was doing, how to get those grants, those loans, that support. And for our very first webinar, we had 1,009 people register, which was, you know, we were thinking 300 or 400, but we had over 1,000, which was amazing. And I think it was close to 700 of them came on live. And then I think we've had another 200 or so actually watching the replay. So out of the registrants, I would say we got about 80% actually saw something. And we just carried on. And on a weekly basis, we've had the vice president of Facebook from the UK, from EMEA. We've had Lady Nicholson, Nicola Mendelsohn, Lady Nicola Mendelsohn. Then we had Her Highness Basma Al Sayed, who's become one of our international patrons. She's from Oman. We've had Gina Miller. You guys may not know Gina, but Gina, you may have heard of the woman in the UK who took the government to court over Brexit. I don't know if you heard that story, but one woman, she was a one-woman band. She took the UK government to try to stop Brexit. And we've carried on. We've had some fantastic, every week we've had amazing speakers. And was it last week or the week before, Dr. Glenna has been joining us, and I've been trying to get her to come on board to speak, but you two came on and spoke last week. Was it last week? It was last week, wasn't it? So yeah, we got, you know, we shared that a bit. And it's become such a way of life. It's a busy life and it's hard work, but it's so gratifying because, you know, the comments we get, the comments we get have been absolutely amazing, absolutely amazing. And our tagline is, she'll leave you speechless. And most of the week, most of the talks, whether it's a she or a he, they've done exactly that. We will continue this until we know that we can meet physically, and we may even do it again after, because we have women from all over the world and they can't all come to London. So it's a great way of, you know, when we're online, I think you may have noticed we had people from Kenya, we had women from Chicago, from Boston, from New York, from Washington, and of course you guys, all over the world. So it's a great way, and we're planning what we do. I think I explained to you before, what we do is once we've made the recording, we repurpose the video. We have the videos, then we repurpose the audio into a podcast. We've started podcasts, which we'd never done before. We get the script transcribed and we make articles and blogs out of that. So we do whatever we can to repurpose everything. So once you're on Wintrade, not only do you get an incredible social media campaign and emailed out to over 30,000, I think we have on our list, you also get repurposed in many ways.
Let me just say, you certainly do help us to understand how important it is to not say what happened, but what am I going to make happen? You know, I always say I get up every morning and I bake bread, because I was a single mom too, and I know what it's like, but unwavering strength and perseverance through the power of my networks and connections. So would you talk a bit about how women who are undergoing some form of stress in light of this pandemic can use those kinds of connections to persevere?
Absolutely. Well, I have a saying. Well, it's not my saying. I read it somewhere, but I've made it my own. You know, under stress, you can get bitter or you can get better. And with COVID, I think a lot of people have got better. I think so many people, again, using another expression, necessity is the mother of all creation. And if you think about, you know, if you think about COVID, it for me, it was necessary for me to find a way out. And when you're, for me, when my back's in a corner, I will really find something, some good out of it. You know, I use a lot of expressions. The other one I use is nothing concentrates the mind like a hanging. That might not be so sociably acceptable, but nothing concentrates the mind. And if you're in trouble, your mind will find some way out. You will find some way out. And I think for women who's tended to have, I've seen so many examples, and I'm sure your audience have seen so many examples, from yoga teachers who are now doing yoga online, to you know, to chefs who are sharing their recipes online, from to you, Patricia, who's sharing your garden online. I saw all that. All that beautiful, you know, you go out there and tell people how to plant and grow. It was been amazing. But you know what? I think in a way, it's one of the best things that has happened to us, because we are thinking of so many more ways of sharing and caring. And as Dr. Glenna said, you know, we are more, as women, we are more sharing and caring. And I think it's been necessary. I mean, you know, I can talk about the kind of businesses I know about, but I'm not sure exactly the kind of businesses or the entrepreneurs that you've got online. But practically everything can go online. Psychologists are having, you know, consultations over Zoom, coaching over Zoom instead of in person. There's so many things, there's so many platforms as well. And, you know, this COVID has definitely spawned a whole new brand of platforms. I mean, who'd ever heard of Zoom before? Well, we did actually, but it's exploded. Zoom definitely has exploded. But I use another one that I've used for 4 years. And again, I've never used my platform so much as I have during COVID and during lockdown. So it's really just for us to think and, you know, differentiate ourselves, because there's a lot of people doing a lot of the same things, but how are you different? How will you stand out? What is your brand? What is your differentiator? We can talk about that all day long.
You answered the next question. So I will want to, you know, you gave some exceptional examples of where we could look at pursuing the options in light of this situation. I'd like to talk a little bit about our market. We are in Gettysburg, Pennsylvania, and many people know the history of Gettysburg with respect to the Civil War. And so we are a location where there are a lot of related businesses, such as hotels and hotels and restaurants and other kinds of tourist attractions that support the particular emphasis on the Civil War heritage sites, et cetera. So many of these individuals who are running these businesses, of course, are suffering because there have been shutdowns, et cetera. So what would you say in terms of some out of the box kinds of things that they might think of doing to upstart their businesses?
Okay, so I don't know what they're already doing.
Through virtual events in particular.
I think, I was just going to say, I think there's an opportunity to do virtual tours that people can either buy into or certainly subscribe to when we're, you know, okay, we can't all go physically in groups, but there's no reason why people couldn't do, and entrepreneurs couldn't do themed tours, virtual tours. And as slowly but surely things come back to normality, the tours that people see online, they would want to come and experience that, you know, when they come back. And there's no reason why. One of the things that I used to like to do in the portrait galleries, where you walk around the gallery and you have an earpiece and people are explaining in the earpiece what you're looking at, why couldn't people join a conference whilst one person is doing exactly that kind of tour? I don't know the tourism business well enough, but that I think is something that a lot of people could buy into. People could learn so much more by, and it sounds awful, by sitting at home and watching the experts go and do these tours and talk about these tours. And as I say, and until we're able to go back and visit them physically, there's no reason why you can't keep those audiences engaged.
That's great. Thank you so much for that. So just again, to go back to these uncertain times, unusual times, if you will, what's the best way for women to support each other during these unusual times?
Well, I think it's doing exactly what we're doing now. You know, there are a lot of female circles. It's great that, you know, you guys are doing these talks. And I think what would be amazing is if we could network internationally. I mean, it costs nothing now to do that. Just as I'm sitting here talking to you, you know, your networks could join in Wintrade, my networks could join in here, Dr. Glenna and her tribe and her pit crew, because I'm going to use that, her pit crew can join. And there's got to be something that as collaborators, we could do. We could probably get a world conference together, I'm sure.
Of course,
You know, we need to be adventurous. We need to be disruptive, as Dr. Glenna is. We need to be connectors as you are. So it's just about thinking more creatively and exploring what can be done. And if you're passionate, you'll find something. We always do. We've found something for the past. When people say to me, how long have you known Patricia? I said, oh, it must be 100 years, 100 years or more. We've known each other for so long. But, you know, we're always still connecting. We find ways of supporting each other. I want to bring a delegation to your farm as soon as we physically can. And, you know, it's just been amazing.
thank you for that.
Dr. Glenna is in for a global conference.
So and I'm ready for that. You touched on something that relates to the global world, the globe, if you will. So how significant are women-owned businesses to the global economy?
Well, we're becoming more and more important than ever. There are so many more women now who are the breadwinners, the heads of the households, where we are now really making a dent in that whole tech economy and the tech world. And I think that is so, it's, you know, endless possibilities. It's very exciting. And I think the important thing is for, well, I'm a grandmother now, but for my daughter's generation and I think even our generation, because I know you're a grandmother now as well, Patricia, beautiful little girl, to really encourage those young women to, you know, to be creative, to get into the tech world, because if you're not in the tech world, and I don't believe you, Dr. Glenna, I think you are in the tech world in so many ways, but to make sure that we're in the tech world, because if we're not, we will get left behind. You know, if we're not moving forward and if we're not ahead of the game, we're going backwards. You can't be in the middle. There's no middle ground. Either you're moving forward or you're going backwards.
Thank you so much. And more of this from Dr. Yvonne as well as Dr. Glenna if you're coming on to the next half of our webinar. So I want to thank you and thank Dr. Glenna. I've known her actually a little bit longer than I've known you. And but I'm really just so excited about your collaboration with Dr. Glenna and how we, through We Women Empowered, can do more with you. So we're going to now thank some of the individuals who made this webinar possible, our in-kind sponsors. And we are going to ask each one of them to say about 1 minute with respect to what they do. And our first one is Kylie.
Mm.
Where is Kylie? Oh, there she is.
Hi.
Hi.
Thank you, Glenna. Thank you, Yvonne. That was amazing. Thank you, Patricia, for introducing me. Hello again, everyone. As Patricia mentioned, I'm Kylie Myers. I manage business development and advertising for Celebrate Gettysburg Magazine. So at Celebrate Gettysburg Magazine, we celebrate modern life in a historic town and in all of the counties that we serve. We are a bi-monthly regional magazine. We cover all of Adams and York County, and then we also cover numerous surrounding counties in both Pennsylvania and Maryland. Our digital edition extends even further than that into the largely metropolitan areas that surround this area, such as Baltimore, Philadelphia, DC, the Virginia areas. We are entering our 14th year as the premier publication in this area. So we've been around for a long time, and we're super proud of that. We enjoy so much really just highlighting all of the good things that are happening in the areas that we serve, and most importantly, the amazing people. So our September-October issue each year is dedicated to highlighting women in business, education, and finance. So we are a huge supporter of women and an advocate for the advancement of women in all industries, in their careers, in their relationships, and in their journeys as individuals and also collectively. So we're honored to be a sponsor of this event. I just want to thank you, Glenna and Yvonne, again for your time and for your insight today. I'm honored to be a founding member of We Women Empowered and all of the exciting things that we're doing. And I just want to say thank you to each and every one of you for joining us today. So thank you, Patricia.
Thank you.
Thank you, Kylie. Is Alexia on?
Hello, I am.
Great. Speak about your business.
Well, thank you again so much. I'm sorry, I was trying to get the camera to turn on.
Excuse me, let me interject. Alexia was the pioneer who took that trip across the pond for women.
Yes, yes, and it was such an amazing experience. It really was. I honestly, just a quick backstory. I met Patricia as we were passing by during the PA conference for women in 2000. I think it was 2016, 17. Yeah,
17,
2017.
yes.
And so it was such an amazing experience that I had with Patricia, that she introduced me to the Win Trade experience and told me all about Dr. Yvonne. Myself and two other colleagues of mine had a chance to go, and I mean, my life is forever changed just from being able to participate. It was such a wonderful experience. And so then as I returned, I was also able to meet Dr. Glenna. And so what I am here representing one of the newest businesses that a few peers of mine have launched, which is cocobump.com. Many people are familiar with a lot of the disparities, especially in the African-American community, that women face as it relates to their maternal health. And so cocobump.com is a resource and retail site where you're able to purchase gifts, and you're able to also obtain and see resources around meditation, mindfulness, doula, even therapeutic services. And the three in particular components that we like to acknowledge as it relates to our women and our moms is in the stages of pregnancy, postpartum, as well as compassion. And our compassion boxes are geared towards women and families who may have experienced a loss during that pregnancy phase. So I just want to thank so much again to the three of you amazing women, Patricia, Dr. Glenna, Dr. Yvonne, for the way that you have just enlightened us today, because it is through a lot of that work that gave us the encouragement to even launch Coco Bump.
Our pleasure. And as I said, these are the kinds of webinars that We Women Empowered intends to offer more frequently in response to women who are looking at where to turn or looking at wanting to formulate new ideas for how to survive and thrive. Is Kathy on?
I don't believe Kathy is with us. So maybe you could say a few words about working with
Kathy
Kathy.
is the owner of Furman Creative, which is a local social media PR. It's so many things Kathy does under her umbrella. She's actually my social media consultant. So she's been very helpful with getting the Patricia Evelyn Green brand out there. And that's Kathy in a nutshell. Is anyone here from She Hanover? She Hanover? These are all busy women, and I mean, so that they're out there making the money, so I'm not mad at them. So now let me tell you about She Hanover. I'm a part of She Hanover also. Liz and Beth are just bad women. They just, I don't want to use a curse word, bad A women. So the bottom line is, are they on yet?
Mary Beth is here. She's under a different
Wonderful.
name, so I'm going to go ahead and unmute
Okay,
her.
wonderful.
Go ahead, Mary Beth. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. I don't know if my camera's working or not.
We don't see you.
All right, let me see if I can fix that.
I'll work on that behind the scenes for you.
All right, thank you. I'm Mary Beth Hockenberry. I'm one of the co-founders of She Hanover, which stands for Support Her Effort. We really appreciate the opportunity to sponsor this today, and it was a wonderful webinar. We're a group of 250 professional and community-minded women who join together in the greater Hanover area. Our purpose is to use personal.
Okay. Technical.
I went somewhere.
There you
There
go.
you are.
Hey, hi, everybody.
Hi.
Did you hear any of that?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. All right. So our purpose is we join together and we use personal storytelling to help women learn from the experience of each other. And then we encourage connections that are professionally and personally rewarding. We've been around for a couple of years and we continue to go strong. For anyone that's in the area, we meet 4 times a year and new members are always welcome. So thank you.
And thank you, Mary Beth. And last but certainly not least, we have Jasmine and Kavil from HAC. They've been very instrumental in the production work behind this webinar.
Thank you, Patricia. Appreciate that. I'm very thankful to be in a position today where I can share that I feel like I've realized my dreams. And I'll explain a little bit more about what I mean. But my name is Jasmine Simpson. I am the Associate Dean of Business Studies with the School of Business Technology and Industry with HAC, Central Pennsylvania's Community College. We're a higher education institution located in South Central Pennsylvania. And we have 5 campuses, and we also offer online classes. And this semester, we're running remote classes. When I say I've realized my dreams, to clarify, it sort of feels like I'm kind of living in a deja vu moment. And once kind of dreamed of having a platform to connect with such high profile, powerhouse, inspiring women like all of you. You kind of motivate me and inspire me. So it's been awesome. I'm thankful to have this time and space to kind of lean in and learn from impressive forward thinkers. Like our adored artist Beyonce say, girls, we run the world. And I truly do believe we run the world. But it is a new era and it's an exciting time to make connections with folks. I'm not just saying that because, HAC is a sponsor, or that we have Dr. Lori Hockley, Dr. Lori Hockley, one of our very own esteemed faculty members and co-founder of this lovely organization. I'm a mentor, peer, student advocate, mother, hands down, just kind of a caring person. But at any rate, I guess what I mean is that it's an exciting kind of time in our lives to re-image, to rethink, and to reframe our previous kind of way of living. This kind of has broadened our scope to make connections in this way. So it's kind of really neat to have all these people around the horn here. Even though it seems we're kind of living in kind of a state of alarm right now, and we now kind of have to recreate a new foundation to lead from. While it seems we have this sort of initial partnership, I kind of can hear all these organizations on here and think about so many other ways to kind of network and develop additional partnerships, as Dr. Thompson shared. I personally want to support the organization as well as while representing HAC too, but I wish to identify other areas of collaboration related to our academic programs, whether it's credit or non-credit programs, just to kind of develop connections within our organizations. My colleagues that are with me today, I kind of stole their space, so thanks so much. But I'd like to introduce Dr. Cavill Anderson and Elizabeth Stahl and allow them to share their titles and their organization development with HAC, Central Pennsylvania's Community College. So I'll turn it over to them for that. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Well, maybe they're not connected. So I'll share Dr. Cavill Anderson. She's our Director of Organization Development, and Elizabeth Stahl, she's the Coordinator of Organization Development. And they also really helped to support this event today. So thank you.
Thank you. Thanks to all of our in-kind sponsors, and thanks to our speakers again. And I'm going to turn it over to Stacy now.
And while
Hello,
Stacy-
sorry.
Oh, Cavill, I just saw that you maybe are with us. Did you have anything you wanted to add before we wrap up? Okay, go ahead, Stacy. Thank you.
Sure. Thank you all for being with us today. This was amazing. Dr. Glenna Crooks and Dr. Yvonne Thompson, I sat here furiously taking notes. I really learned a lot today, and hopefully all the women who are on with us learned some things as well. We can get a chance to debrief for those of us who are going to be joining us for the Q&A here in a little bit. Okay. I think we wanted to say thank you. Kylie, I feel like I'm stealing your thunder here, but a sincere thank you to Glenna and Yvonne. It was amazing that we could connect with these powerhouses of women who could share their insights and hopefully get us excited and walk away with some new ideas to apply, whether it's to life or our business, and feel inspired. And I feel like a lot of that has been missing in this new normal. So it's such a pleasure to, I don't know, feel all jazzed up and excited. Okay, so if you are going to be joining us for the post-webinar Q&A, I did post a link. I actually think it posted twice in the chat. So if for some reason you need that, you can email me personally at wardstacy@gmail.com. I will put that email address in the chat as well. For some reason, we were having a little trouble with our other email. So if you need anything, please email that address. And also, I want to let you know you will be receiving some things in your email box next week or within the next week. We're going to be sending out a survey. I know Glenna has some things that she's going to be sending to you as well. So we will be doing that. And I don't know, I hope you all enjoyed everything. Kylie, is there anything else that you would like to add?
I would like to add some things. I'm looking at some notes here.
Please do.
So Dr. Glenna, thanks for that. We want to invite everyone to mention we and connect with Glenna. And are you on LinkedIn? You're on LinkedIn too, Yvonne, right? Yes. To connect with them on LinkedIn. And also we'd like to also mention, we talked about Dr. Glenna's book, Network Sage. Dr. Yvonne also has a book, 7 Traits of Highly Successful Women on Boards. Did I say that correctly, Yvonne? Okay, she can't hear me. So make sure that if you're looking at getting even more information with respect to these talented women, buy their books.
Yes, you did mention, I did hear you, thank you.
Okay, thank you. So Stacy, you're going to transition us, right?
Yes, I am. I just want to say on our website, wewomenempoweredpro.org, we will be posting a link to both of their books. I am not quick enough to get it in the chat right now, but we will be doing that this afternoon, hopefully. So I've read The Network Sage. I have not read Yvonne's book, but it is on my list. I am very excited. I love carrying on that feeling of inspiration. So thank you for that, ladies. And I think that's it. So we will give everybody, it looks like about a half-hour break before we come back for our Q&A with Glenna and Yvonne. Is there anything else anyone would like to add for the better of the group?
Dr. Lori, you
Just
want
a
to have closing?
yeah, just a final thank you to our esteemed panelists and to the village of women behind the scenes helping to make this happen. As I said, you know, the bar was a little bit high, but this is our first webinar, and we're just, you know, a group of passionate women who wanted to do something to bring likewise, like passionate women together to connect. So thank you all for joining us. And I really hope to see a lot of you at the post-webinar Q&A, where you'll get a chance to interact with one another and with Dr. Thompson and Dr. Crooks. So thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Um,
I see a question there. Would you please share information on the taped Wind Trade Thursday talks on the website? Yes, we would be happy to. We'll make sure that gets up there.
And you did tell them this is being recorded. If they have friends, well, this is being recorded. So if you have friends that you think can gain from these insights, then please share that recording with them. Again, they can get those details from our website, correct?
Correct. And I will also be sending that out in an email as soon as we have it.
All right, thank you.
Okay,
Thank
you
you all
everyone.
so much.
Thank you.
We'll
See
see
you
you at
later.
1:45.
Yep.